Greetings, Hira family, and welcome. I have recently received two decks that I ordered last year. Um, Also, this is a new setting for this channel. Hi, I am visiting my best friend, I guess. One of my many best friends. I have a lot of best friends. I'm the type of person that's like, you can have multiple best friends. Like, you know, anyway, I'm visiting one of them. And life is lifing. Situations and circumstances are what the situations and circumstances are. Because of those situations and circumstances, actually, I'm going to be using Siri today. But I ordered the story engine and the deck of worlds, which is two systems designed to help uh, creatives, be they writers or like world builders for things such as like Dungeons and Dragons or any other thing. The deck of worlds helps to build like locations. The story engine helps build characters, stories, plots. It sets a framework. And so, because I am who I am, which is something interesting that I've been hearing. Um, Excuse me, not an awful lot, but like, uh, what's his name? It's the guy that does the trick archery on YouTube, and sometimes there's like a pole. He'll be like on a pole, and he talks about weapons, especially in contexts of like video games and fantasy versus like real life. When he's like, in video games, this is how, or in fantasy, this is how these weapons are used. But in real life, like if that were the case, they wouldn't be very practical. But he was like, there was, I think, a new handbook. I don't know if it was an expansion to D&D, but he was going through the classes and he was like, because I am who I am, I'm also going to show you some stuff. So that was the context. But because I am who I am, I was like, oh, I could use these to like read or whatever. So, in addition to anything creative that I might want to get into, I've already done one of these on the Legacy channel because I ordered this deck with the intention of using it on that channel. Well, loosely with the intention of using it on that channel. But I used everything else that I got in that last batch of orders on that channel. So I was like, it only felt right. But now we're coming over here. So the what I want to do is, because I've been hearing, and it's one of those things. For me, there are certain things that they resonate as they resonate differently depending on the times, both in my own personal life and external to me. But from my perception and experience, or perception of experience. But one of the things that's been kind of resonating differently lately, which makes sense in my life because it feels like I am at a sort of culmination point. But now when I hear like shifting timelines, to me, almost mm, there's a past, present, and future on every timeline, right? And so I guess it's a question of like, how do we know if, like, within the same timeline, things aren't just like improving or getting better or changing rather than it being like a completely different timeline? You know what I mean? And so I had the idea today to use the deck of worlds. I'm going to use the story engine to do, I almost want to use the story engine to give an outside energy, to like create a character with its own motivations. Hopefully, of course, one of like a benevolent, assisting spirit, if not the divine, or an aspect of the divine. Um, I am marginally better than last time. I talk a whole lot more, so hopefully I don't have the same issues I had last time I was live here because that was an experience. Um, so I want to do that to have an external character, or maybe it's a representation of someone with their own motivations, and then I actually want to do two things as I've been thinking about it. I want to have, so in the deck of worlds, it's designed to create a world as vast or as small as you want. So you can have like multiple areas, just like on Earth, how we have different environments. We have deserts, we have oceans, we have forests, we have plains, all kinds of stuff, right? And even within the same state or province or land, country, you can have multiple sort of environments, towns, cities, villages, whatever. And so I want to do one that's like on the same timeline. And actually, I also have the 8-bit fantasy tarot. I think what I want to do is see, but then I don't know if what I wanted to do is I wanted to have one that was essentially on the same timeline. And then I wanted to have one that was on a completely different timeline. And for a completely different timeline, I was going to use a significator of like the Fool, or maybe even Death, the Wheel of Fortune, the World, a card of like taking a leap, like the Fool, a card of completion, like the World, a card of things changing over or going through significant transformation, like the Wheel of Fortune, Death, the Ten of Swords. Excuse me. And then I wanted to have some cards of just like the future, same timeline, but just because it's the same timeline doesn't mean that things can't change within that timeline, within that same timeline, right? Like for a person who dreams of being an actor, if they were to like do the classes, like acting classes, get a mentor, do all of these things to hone their craft, then like a timeline shift for them isn't necessarily like booking the first gig, getting their first role, or having their big break. It's like it's within the same sequence of events. Like that's what all of that was to build up to. It doesn't require necessarily a timeline shift in order for that to be the outcome, because again, that's what things were building towards. So I also wanted to have, so they have like smaller sections. Let me see. The book is literally right here. I can read it to you. Because they have landmarks within sort of environments, and so it would be like like I'll just read it. So regions establish a microsetting's main terrain type and act as a hub for arranging other cards. Landmarks add geographical sites and points of interest within that region. So for the same timeline, it would be like the same region. And then for a timeline jump, it would be a different region. So there would be multiple landmarks within the same region and then a completely different region to symbolize like the timeline shift. So maybe I'll get two characters with two motivations, one for each region. Now, what I just had the thought of is there are cards like the Six of Swords, the Eight of Cups, the Ten of Wands, Eight of Cups, Six of Swords, Ten of Wands. I can't think of a Pentacles card. Maybe even like the Chariot, that are like would be movement within the same timeline. So it's not necessarily like a full leap of faith into like a full quantum leap or a world card. There's a timeline that is like reach an ending or completion or death where there's a complete transformation. Um, so, and then there are like all kind of cards within this. So I think that is the approach I'm going to take. I didn't know if I wanted to build the worlds or the characters first. So I was going to use Siri because Siri is back in my life. Google is also still in my life. Um, right now, I, because of circumstances that are largely irrelevant to pretty much all of you, unless I watch this, in which it's still kind of irrelevant because it's already happened. Um, I think I want to build the world's. We'll see. We'll see. So y'all are pretty familiar with the way that I read. Ooh, Justice at the Cut. Interesting. Justice at the Cut with the star. Are we not officially in Aquarius season? Oh, interesting. Okay. There are, so within the story engine and the deck of worlds, the cards are squares, and most of the cards have either two sides or four sides. Now, a feature of the Nine of Swords, a feature of this is that they're also square, but sometimes they come out in different orientations. So I could match an orientation to, one second, sorry. Excuse me. Sorry. I'm trying to like hurry. I am using a device. Oh. I haven't used this phone in a minute, so I use different emojis now, kind of. Anyway, because I was wondering how I would do like the character. So if a court card comes out, or even if another card comes out, maybe instead of asking Siri, I'll use a card. But that means I need to get all kinds of orientations. So I'm just like making sure I kind of like, twist these up. That's actually one feature of this deck that I love. And it just, look, there's the Eight of Cups, a card of journey. That would be within the same timeline. The Eight of Cups and the Six of Wands. It's interesting when you get enough cards with this deck, like which cards come out in the same orientation. Or, last time I used these, last time I was here, it was interesting. The Four of Wands, love that energy. I think the Four of Wands would also be, the star just came out, the Knight of Wands is at the bottom of the deck. Looks like a lot of cards are still upright, which is fine. You know. The Hangman, pick up a star. All right. I think I may get one of these and let it sort of like inform what we're doing. This will be interesting. I have a few hours before we'll see. We'll see. Actually, in the interest of time, because I am meeting my friend today, after work, we're going to find something to do. I'm going to start with the place. That's what I'm going to do. Now, obviously, this is general. I'm going to start with the two different regions. And maybe we'll see if, however this resonates, maybe we'll see if like a timeline shift is even necessary. You know what I mean? Because again, for the person who has prepared their whole life to become something, anything, to get that opportunity and that big break, it doesn't necessarily require a timeline shift. It's just the natural outcome of invested effort or energy or time or whatever. Now, how do personal timelines fit in with larger collective timelines? Maybe that's a different question because we all have our own trajectories within our own lives that are can be and are affected by environment, like the environment and the situation that we're in, local to greater. Um, and so I've seen sort of change and shift outside of us externally. Again, there can be impacts on ourselves personally, but not to varying degrees, right? So maybe there could be like an external timeline shift or a greater timeline shift, but a sort of like personal integrity and just integrity in terms of like what on the same trajectory. So it's like regardless of whatever is happening at large, sometimes we're still going about our day to day and nothing necessarily changes too much. Nothing changes too much in terms of like a shift in trajectory, right? Maybe instead of going to one grocery store, we go to another grocery store. Or maybe instead of like meeting one person, we meet another person. And while there are opportunities for those differences to have significant changes and impacts on our lives, depending on who we meet or whatever, our personal trajectory doesn't necessarily have to change, right? Like for the actor that's going to have their big break, it doesn't necessarily matter if they're going to perform at one place or another place. If they meet this agent, scout, or this actor, actress, movie star, whoever, it's almost like it doesn't matter where they find that exposure or who they come across, because their path is to sort of make it big or to be in whatever anyway, you know. So maybe instead of like meeting the casting director, you meet a producer or somebody else, you know what I mean? That kind of energy. I see the city and the fields. She's giving what, country mouse, city mouse type vibes. All right, so I'm gonna give it one and I'll pull the top one. The first is the swamp. We have the marsh on the Legacy channel. The first sort of region is the swamp. And this is quantum leaping to this top one, the Delta. This is so interesting. On the Legacy channel, the Marsh came out, Masterless Marsh, but the bottom of the deck was the Delta. And there was this energy of like an area that was once very fertile and very rich that had become almost stagnant because of things that had transpired and happened. Now, the marsh isn't the swamp, but marshes and swamps are kind of similar. So it's interesting that here we're sort of like starting region one is the swamp, but we can quantum leap into the delta, which again, she's that fertile, she's that abundant, she's that all of that. I do still have like a cough. So I'm just like trying not to go there. But this is interesting. Bottom of the deck, if we're curious, is the heels. The heel is giving me, I feel like the heel is just sort of amplifying or illustrating the sort of almost quantumness, the leap, how it is a different timeline. It's giving me, like in molecular chemistry, maybe, how molecules or structures, even organic structures like proteins or whatever, they may have different configurations. Um, and to go from one configuration to another, there may be like a barrier of like activation energy, which could be like heat that's needed for something to go from one shape to another. Um, that's what the hill is giving me. It's like there's the swamp, and then there's this hill, and then once you get over the hill, you cross over into the delta. Cool. So we're gonna do two landmarks in the swamp, and then one landmark for the delta. The two landmarks in the swamp giving that illustration. The first is a workshop. So this is a double-sided one, but the workshop sort of came face down. And so I guess we're talking about alchemy. I don't have the Wild Unknown Alchemy with me, unfortunately, but she's giving those vibes. Um, so there'll be two landmarks within the swamp to be that like same timeline, and I'll only do one landmark for the delta to be like the thing within the delta rather than just like the delta at large, right? And again, we're sort of like building out um, a reading of this. Again, like y'all probably, whether you know me from here or the Legacy channel, things more or less operate very similarly in a lot of ways, but differently in others. So I do like to put some of these in reverse since they are um, top and bottom. All right, so two more for the. Oh, it's on its side. The archive and the ridge. The archive is facing the workshop. The ridge is facing the delta. I actually love that this came out this way because it's giving threshold energy. So once you cross the ridge, crossing the ridge would effectively be getting over the hump. So then gravity, after you get over the hump, there is still like energy and effort and things that you can do. But on the hill, once you're over the hump, gravity will pull you the rest of the way. Now the force or forces that worked against you on your ascent up the hill will work with you to carry you through. It's almost giving like a follow through. I don't know if she's like golf or basketball. She's giving athletics, some kind of sport where it's like there's a movement that you make and then you just like follow through with the action. So any momentum that you generate or however you shift your center of gravity, uh, whatever, you just like follow through with the action. All right, so a landmark for the delta. Oh, goodness, I don't even know where that card went. I kind of like accidentally squeezed it a little. Oh, here it is. Oh, it fell. So this one actually, I have the story engine over here. The card flew beyond the box and landed behind the story engine deck, face down. The town. There's a town in the Delta. Delta town. She's giving like, I want to say she's giving like Cairo, but like the Nile Delta. The creek and the monument is at the bottom, but the creek is on the bottom. I love that there's like a whole town here. I love that there's a town here rather than the meadow, especially in the Delta, because it gives it like a civilized energy. Um, it's not like the meadow is gorgeous and the meadow is beautiful, and I feel like the meadow is like that green, verdant, full of lifeness of the Delta, but the town makes it feel like lived in. Like there are going to be other people right? Like it's not going to be this single solitary experience on the other side of this transition, right? Like there are other people, there is civilization, there is hope, you know? Cool. All right. So next, I want to get an advent. No, next we'll get a namesake card for the swamp and a namesake card for the delta. And then I want um or maybe not actually. I'll get a namesake for the archive and a namesake for the ridge. So within the swamp, there is this workshop. It feels like the point of the workshop in the swamp is to generate things that could be of use or beneficial, right? So, like, let's say that in the swamp, a lot of the water isn't necessarily potable because it's swampy. Well, within the workshop, you're going to find an inventor or an alchemist, someone working on something to make the water potable and drinkable. Um, it's like the workshop is the place where things happen to create future forward motion and progression and to make life easier within the swamp, to make the swamp a more enjoyable place, to make it less swampy, right? So that's our main, that's sort of where we start, regardless if we make the quantum jump into this Delta town or we make the linear progression to this archive. But the thing about the archive is because of the context of archive and its heavy association with kept records of the past, because of its heavy association with the past, and because the archive faces the like this is how they came out. So the archive faces the workshop, the ridge faces this town over here in the delta. Um, and pick a movie and she's giving that energy. I've never seen Amityville Horror, I think, but it's kind of like that energy where it's like outside of this town, the world is different. Um, there's another show. There are so many like pieces of literature media where it's like the whole thing takes place within like a town or a village or a state, a country or whatever, and then you get outside of that place and you find out that the world is actually very different. That's the ridge. The ridge is like the edge of the town or that country or whatever. The ridge is the other side of the ocean. And then you cross over into the delta and you're like, whoa, like not everything is a swamp. um, so yeah, because of the nature of the archive, it almost feels like it creates a boundary. It redirects someone back to the workshop because of its contextual associations with the past. Okay, so the archive, please. I believe namesakes have four sides. So I'm going to give it a twisty shuffle. So when I do this, I'm just like, trying to get all four sides in the mix. Ooh, it flipped over. Now for the name, typically the names are for the regions. Maybe I'll keep it like that. But since these are four sided, I am going to honor the left side of the card. One of them flipped over in here. I got to find it. Oh, come on. I know something flipped over. Here it is. Of the sun. So at the bottom it's of sorrows, as I would read it face up, but since archive is facing to the left, I'm going to take of the sun as facing the left. So we have the archive of the sun. And then this ridge, I'm going to do the same, but take the one on the right. And then I think I'll get one for the Delta. Maybe I don't know if I feel like the Delta doesn't need it. Oops. I feel like it does not require that. Ooh. So the bottom is this is so interesting. Summer. But that's not the one that came out. Without Walls is at the bottom. The Ridge Without Walls. But the one on the right is of Hunters, which is interesting. So this is how it stands. And then they're meant to be stackable. So we have the Archive of the Sun on one side and then the Ridge of Hunters on the other. Now, Hunters giving an energy or an association with, um, she's almost giving like foragers, explorers. She's giving like explorers. And like everything beyond the ridge sort of being this question mark, the land beyond that which the light touches, um, the world outside of the village or the nation or the program. And so it's giving in Game of Thrones it's not the Night Watch, is it the Night Watch? The people who go like beyond the wall or whatever, who come and go. Um, there is a popular anime in which that honestly came to mind. When you get outside the off of the island, you find out that like life off of the island is like, first of all, you find out that they're on an island. You know that they're like within the walls, but you find out that they're on an island, and then life outside the island is like, girl. Um, but she's giving, I can't remember, the forces or the brigades that go beyond the walls to explore. Um, the hunters that go beyond the ridge of hunters. So it's almost giving an organization or association. So the origin. And maybe I'll get an origin of the workshop and an origin of the town. Origins are also four-sided. So like founded on a joke or a dare. And I'll take the bottom one because, these are also double-sided. So I'll just like match orientations. But again, because of context, it feels like these hunters, like there's a governing body or an association of hunters. Like with the Night Watch, there was the captain or whoever. In the anime, it was a whole faction of the, I guess, essentially military that went beyond the walls to explore and see what's out there. Um, which is, in a way, interesting because of the energy of divinity that has been like the patron or the sponsor of someone. Was it not on this channel? I think it was on this channel. I used the in the Spirit Keepers Tarot Revelations editions, how there was the alignment between man and the divine that we saw in the Sharpshooter. But even in the Hector, there was like man at the bottom of the card and then something of divinity at the top of the card that had the owl in it and everything. So it's kind of like that energy, being selected to be a hunter, to go beyond the ridge and to explore the Delta, to establish the town, or to be a medium between the swamp and the Delta, whatever this workshop is. Okay. I'm gonna do it 3, 2, 1. And I'll take the top card. So the workshop is the homeland of a displaced people. Interesting. I kind of love how I feel like I get so much encouragement by using whatever random Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, Magic the Gathering cards, and like a message coming together that makes me think like, oh yeah, I'll get the deck of worlds and the story engine and like use them to read. The workshop is the homeland of a displaced people, which gives this an interesting context. Because before the workshop in the swamp, it had the energy of like someone, a peoples, who are trying to like make potable water, who are trying to make life in the swamp more comfortable. But with the context of the origin is something of the past. Um, that's why this is the archive of the sun. This is so interesting because it's like it gives me the energy of an age of enlightenment or something of antiquity that is beyond where we are now contextually in a contextual present. So it's like a video game where something like Horizon Zero Dawn, or there's another game, um, maybe Final Fantasy 16, maybe not. I think Final Fantasy 16. There's another game I feel like I just started playing. I can't remember. But it's like there'll be these ruins of ancient civilizations, but the ancient civilizations will be like really, really, really high tech. And then the present day will be less high tech, right? It's given me that kind of energy. Like there were these people who were so far advanced who managed to end up where we are now. And when they came, it was this golden age of all of the knowledge and all of the progress that was possible because they brought that with them. But all of that has been lost to time. And now the world is a far cry of what it used to be. Um, Now it's like the swamp, right? And you find these things in ruins, or you find these archives, you try to reverse engineer, you apply these techniques of old to today. And I can see this in a much more spiritual context where it's like these are ancient teachings from this place or that place. And like, we can use this information for spiritual advancement today. The state of the human mind, heart, spirit, soul of yesterday was much more advanced than that of today. Maybe because we were more connected to each other and nature, you know, maybe it's the trappings of modern life and convenience. Regardless, whatever, doesn't matter. This workshop is the homeland of displaced people. So it's like people have moved into the ruins, basically. And like maybe the people who used to be on this, like, it's almost like if an environment is particularly harsh, but there were civilizations of people who thrived here, it's like, well, they had to thrive somehow. They had to have access to some knowledge or technology, or something had to be different then than it is today if they were able to thrive, right? So we move into the workshop. The workshop is the homeland of the displaced people. The displaced people they could have been displaced from the Delta to the swamp because, again, on the Legacy channel, there was the Delta that became the marsh. And there was the village that knows in the marsh. Maybe it's like the same people. Maybe they were nomadic, or maybe there was a branching off and exploring of this new place. And while one place is more marshy and the other place is more swampy, like where it was the village that knows, the village that remembers, and there was an archive there actually in the village. Um, Here it's like a workshop in the swamp, or yeah, a workshop in the swamp where, again, it's been sort of like commandeered to try to make sense of the technologies and the teachings and to try to thrive. Um, and it's the archive of the sun. That is so, again, it's so interesting and almost religious in a way. Like the reverence created as a trap. Um, Almost like a reverence for who these people were, you know? All right. So this Delta town. Oh, gosh. A car just a car just came out face down in its site of a terrible massacre. Now, this isn't, again, when I read on both channels, it was just 41:14 on the clock. When I read on both channels, sometimes there are like these ties and connections, just like if I were to read on the same channel. Sometimes there's an energetic tie, something that continues to unfold or something. But on the Legacy channel, there was the village that knows, but there was also just like master. There was within Masterless Marsh, there was a village that knows, but the focus was like kind of sort of on the marsh in general. Um, and it was like a former military base, but the way it came out was like that particular part of the marsh used to be a part of this like very fertile, abundant delta, and it was like the foothold into a nation that had more resources, you know. So it's almost like because it was on the boundary or the barrier, because it was on the border, um, as it was invaded, it was like, you know, a foothold or whatever. And the village that remembers, or the village that knows, they kind of sort of like remembered sort of what happened. It's almost like there was either a significant amount of time that had passed or a great deal of retelling of events. Um, but the village that knows had people, or the knowledge was passed down that remembered when that used to be a part of the Delta, the same land. And it came down to the things that make something successful or abundant or whatever, characteristically so desirous. Um, how important it is to like keep that same energy, because basically it's like to acquire something but not take care of it, not tend to it, or to strip it of everything that makes it so, is to invite the energy of decay. So it's interesting that today, because that was like a former military base or whatever, that this Delta town is the site of a terrible massacre, because it almost, again, it references back to that. Um, this is also almost giving this is also giving me the energy of, I can't remember if it was on this channel, the Legacy channel, or both. I think at the time I was using both channels. I almost want to say it was here, but it may have been over there, with the stories of the angels in the Angelarium, and how there was the time where angels lived amongst men and angels taught men many things, but the humans, people, grew like envious or insatiable. And so at some point they turned against the angels in order to maybe try to take their power or whatever. And after a few angels fell, they were like, okay, we got to go. And then Armoros, I believe the angel of undoing, put down the veil to separate men and the angels. Then you get the Penamue, from the Penamue that remembered and honored people in their deaths to make them more like angels, to the Penamue that forgot. what hath been wrought on that fiery hilltop, the statues of man whose names the angels forgot, or something like that. So again, it's almost this whole like there was a transgression against some kind of divinity, even if that divinity is the divinity within man, at a time before it was so easy to, on such a widespread level, deny so many people so many basic humanities and decencies and courtesies, back before it was so easy to be like, well, we need the resources, or to explain away a lot of ugliness that humanity has wrought upon each other or itself, I guess. We as humans have wrought upon each other, or humanity has inflicted upon itself. Um, so it's almost like, so in this case, again, to go from the swamp back to the delta to cross the ridge. So in this case, the ridge of hunters would be the veil. So there's the archive of the sun where, like, we remember, there are peoples who have remembrances of what it was like to live amongst others, um, and how things were different in the teachings and stuff like that. And again, it's that whole, like, there are these culture civilizations. She's giving Atlantis, she's giving like Lemuria, whoever, where it was different, and we can go back to use that knowledge in order to regain or whatever, whatever. The only thing is, one of the things that came to mind that I didn't get to articulate was like the thing about the archive of the sun, the thing about the workshop in the swamp is like all of this technology is old. So the peoples, it's like the workshop was the homeland of a displaced people, right? But like where they were from, things continue to develop and change. And so it's almost like to seek what was known in antiquity or in the past is to almost widen the disparity between where we are and where we could be, if that makes sense. It's like we're going back 1,000, 2,000, however many thousands of years, hundreds, tens of years. But where they're from, like they've continued to move forward. And it's almost like, especially spiritually, our intuition and our connection to the divine will guide us in that direction. But when we pursue, especially actively, this almost regressive sort of path, that's what widens the gap. Our intuition has the capability to get us closer to their level and close the gap. But we're seeking these things of the deep past and like actively going back. And it's not that, I don't know. I don't know why that came across to like communicate in terms of like, that increasing disparity. It's like, well, those people may have been displaced, but there were still people who like didn't make that trip, who are still home. Like things that, again, it's just that like things have continued to progress. And it feels like intuitively, or there are some means to like catch up to where they are now rather than where they were like thousands of years ago, like beyond outdated technology, you know? So, anyway, this ridge of hunters is essentially the veil. This Delta town that was the site of a terrible massacre, it's giving the energy of like where human and the divine, or humans and the others, sort of like met and did whatever before. But this time, again, because this is a timeline shift, it's essentially supposed to be a timeline shift. It's not the same kind of humanity, right? And so it's not going to be the same outcome. Um, this isn't a humanity that is going to grow jealous or envious or insatiable of the angels, the divine, the others, and then in a move to usurp their power or to grow their own whatever, they would begin killing angels or trying to kill angels, trap gods, bend whoever to human will. Um, or I guess they're gonna take that chance or that risk. Interesting. So, an attribute card, what are attributes? Attributes are the present moment, pilgrimage destination. I could see this town. Oof. I kind of want to do the swamp in the Delta. So, I'll get the present state of the swamp in the Delta, and these have four. Knowing, known for one lurid district. What does lurid mean? I don't. I feel like that's a word that I've heard or seen or read in like high fantasy, probably. The stuff that I used to read when I read like lurid detail is like very almost like lucid, right? Like extremely vivid? Question mark. Hey Siri, define lurid.
Here's some info about definition.
Info about definition. Hey Siri, define the word lurid.
Lurid means very vivid in color, especially so as to create an unpleasantly harsh or unnatural effect.
Ooh. So I did get that like almost lucid. Very vivid in color, especially so as to create an unpleasantly harsh or unnatural effect. So is it like nearing the uncanny valley type of thing, or of a description presented in vividly shocking or sensational terms, especially giving explicit details of crimes or sexual matters? The more lurid details of the massacre were too frightening for the children. Oof. And not this being the town, the site of a terrible massacre. Hold up. Do you see that? The more lurid details of the massacre were too frightening for the children. That is crazy. This town, which was the site of a terrible massacre. But again, that was the exact sort of energy of the nature of the rival discovery, the ghostly leader. It was like the village that knows whatever that, who the hangman just came out apparently. And the village that knows whatever that protected document was in the archive or whatever, it revealed a truth that like didn't paint. It feels like it felt like it didn't paint humanity or the people of interest in a good light. It was a history that they'd rather forget, something that they'd rather not be true, right? Because it was, or just in general, one of those like, well, if this is true, then what does this mean about us? And what does this mean about the world that was built upon the um, past or a history or the backs of whatever? And anyway, the Ridge of Hunters, it's almost now also giving the energy of like let's say there is an aspect of the divine or there are like angels that sit at the veil that again like the divine temptress, but sort of like within the realm of the divine temptress and within the realm of the BTFU STFU mind your business queen. I believe I talked about both of them the last time I used the SKT here. 5445 on the clock. So we went from 4114 to 5445, from a 55 to a 99. It is a 9 year. Anyway, um, It's like there are people. Oh, I feel like I just heard an echo. I feel like my voice is like echoing now. Anyway, it's fine. Like there are people who, because again, it's that energy of like our intuition discernment, the divine will lead us to close that gap rather than to widen it by seeking things of the past, like a present day, current day, whatever. It's almost giving me this one show where there's a grand journey, and for the people who completed the journey the first time, you get all the way to the end of the journey to find out that there were these things that you were supposed to like learn along the way to open up the true final destination. And so they had to do the journey twice. They had to make the journey, get to the end, then go like, oh, like we were supposed to gather all of this information so that we would know what to do to find the truth of whatever. But the people that was like a generation or several before where we start watching, where we're watching, or the ones that we're following, they're getting that information as they're making the journey so they won't have to make it twice. And it's like it's that energy. Our intuition and discernment will have us pick up the things that we need along the way so that when we make it to our destination, we can continue beyond the ridge, beyond the expanse, rather than making it to the ridge expanse and then being like, oh, now I got to go back and gather all of this other stuff. um, but anyway, so it's like there are people who we like naturally go to the ridge, we naturally approach the edge of the veil, and there is an aspect or someone on the other side of the veil. It's like as you approach the veil, as you gaze into the abyss stares back. There's like it's like that's the hunter. The hunter is the agent, is the scout, is the person who's like, you have potential, you have talent, you seem like you're not going to eventually one day try to murder me. So we feel comfortable inviting you beyond the veil type of energy. So at first, but again, it's that whole like organization, society, a branch of something type of energy. Like there's a system or a coalition or like a guild or not necessarily a governing body, an organization. There's an organization of people, and to like be invited beyond the ridge to this delta town that was the site of a terrible massacre in the past. So there's attributes, the attribute of the swamp, and as the card falls out, it'll be the bottom one because the bottom one has text that reads in the same direction. Right? Three, two, one. Culturally specific tattoos. This is such an interesting attribute. Value, self determination, short or long growing season, home of a religious order. So, the opposite of culturally specific tattoos is home of a religious order. I feel like those kind of sort of like match. The culturally specific tattoo would be symbolic of that religious order. But this swamp, again, like this is so interesting. I don't remember the attribute I got last time, but I'm pretty sure these are markers of the present. This is actually interesting too because of a random synchronicity. Um, I was playing priorities with my extended family. They're basically extended family at this point with my best friend's family. He's family, they're family, we're all family. And especially like after I went to the wedding and I was able to take my mom, or my mom was able to go with me. Now his mom will be like, "Oh, how's your mom?" And I don't know, all of it is fine anyway. We were playing priorities, and my friend's sister doesn't have any tattoos. One of the cards that came out for priorities, basically, you get 5 random cards and you rank them. One person ranks them from their top priority to their bottom, and everyone else guesses how they rank them. So it's a game of how well do you know each other. or getting to know each other. And like Chinese symbol tattoos came out, and we put it as her last priority. And her husband was like, she's not going to get a tattoo or whatever. And then she was like, I used to design these like tattoos. Her brother didn't know, her husband didn't know. I for sure didn't know. If they didn't know, we all found out. We were like, what? So that's why I'm like, this is interesting. Culturally specific tattoos is an aspect of the swan. Because low hanging fruit, it's almost like she's almost giving like the mark of Cain. But it's like instead of like if Cain had killed Abel, Cain had killed like an angel or whatever. And then once Cain killed an angel, he was marked as someone who had like, failed. Like if you can fail a piece of divinity, maybe it returns to non-material form or its essence flows back to the divine girl. I don't know. The swamp of culturally specific tattoos. Again, because of the whole like Delta town on the other side of the ridge, other side of the veil, being the site of a massacre within the same almost framework, is that not even just. So there's the one that is like the mark of Cain type of, and maybe there are different marks. Because there's this other show that I'm watching right now, and within that show, it's like a virtual reality video game, basically. And so within the game in that show, there are seven like bosses, super high level, very like there's only one in the game. They're called Colossi, the seven Colossuses. Um, and we just met our second character that's been marked by one of the seven Colossi. So if one of the seven are particularly impressed by someone, they will mark them. And when they get marked by one of the seven colossi, they're invited to this place where I guess like all the lore sort of like comes together. And so that's also coming to my mind, like someone that has been marked by, you could say, the divinity of that world. Um, but now that's also giving me like how they'll say like if you have a certain mark on your palm, then that's like this marker. I don't know if there is a region. There might be. I don't know if there is somewhere where like a specific birthmark shape, or if a birthmark is in a certain place, then it was like a sign of like being a shaman or being chosen by a divinity or having some kind of connection to something like that. Like I almost want to say that that is the case, but I would have like absolutely no clue what that mark would be or what it would symbolize. Maybe there are all kinds of marks. Well, you could be, I guess, marked by divinity either way, as like yeah, like she's legit, or you may want to avoid this one because if they have an opportunity, they will try to trap you and rob you of everything that makes you divine and try to claim it for themselves. Anyway, this is, I know, like here are the hoverfish. Anyway, it's fine. The swamp of culturally specific tattoos, but I don't even necessarily know if at this point the people who have been marked within the swamp would recognize the marks or even know what they mean. Because it could also be one of those, she's almost giving like the Five of Cups, the grotesque. Someone being marked in a certain type of way makes them incredibly precious to the divine or some aspect of the divine, or that mark sort of like symbolizes their connection to the other side, and so back when the knowledge was there, that person would have been like a shaman, or that person would have been the person that people go to because they're so favored by the divine, or because they're so close to the other side of the veil. They would have like been honored, or that would have been recognized and appreciated in some way. But because the knowledge is lost and it looks weird, then it's almost like they're bullied, or they're teased, or they grow to hate it, which is very the grotesque. The very thing that makes us divine sometimes is what separates us, or isolates, or alienates us from others, and we grow to want to fit in and therefore want to hide it, or we think of it as something bad. Culturally specific tattoos, I did not. Okay. So the attribute of the delta. Now, again, that can be very like human design or birth chart, astrological birth chart. I've come across videos, especially when I was early in like exploring my own birth chart through videos on YouTube. Um, there would be like, these are star seed markers in a birth chart, or this means like this is a connection to a deity or something like that. I could see that being an interpretation of like culturally specific tattoos that are relevant within the swamp, especially within the context of like spirituality and stuff, right? To have this aspect or this placement can mean whatever. So, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, it came out. Two of them came out. So we have covered in trees and crisscrossed by canals as the bottom of both of these. The opposite of covered in trees is frequent changes of leadership. The opposite of crisscrossed by canals is known by many names. Oh, a delta crisscrossed by canals. Okay, that kind of makes sense, right? So I actually love this. The delta covered in trees and crisscrossed by canals. Crisscrossed by canals gives me a civilized aspect, like people live here, beings live here. Especially because the past of this town is that it was the site of a terrible massacre. Covered in trees and crisscrossed by canals, it gives me the energy that things have recovered, that again, that life has moved on. Where things were at this time of antiquity, when there was no separation, where there was no veil, and where they are now, it's like on the other side, it's like as things may have paused and decayed or degenerated in some way on one side of the veil, or on one side of the ridge, they continued. There was a point of recovery, and then it continued moving forward on the other side. So again, it's that energy of like, to go back is to widen that gap. Um, but yeah, like covered in trees and crisscrossed by canals. Covered in trees, it gives me that like after Chernobyl, how like life returned to the area. Crisscrossed by canals is almost giving me this like life has adapted. The people have adapted in a way. Because like maybe before, there weren't, maybe there were like streets. Maybe like whatever this massacre was, it like changed the landscape. And a lot more water came into the area, maybe like craters and valleys were created but were eventually filled by water. And maybe it's that water that came into the area after that allowed the trees to grow. or nature to grow and flourish. And in order to not take away from nature healing itself, people learn to live with it rather than to change the landscape to suit their desires. That's what she's giving. She's giving that. Is the sun in Aquarius? Let's see. I got time nomad on this, which I love. Where is Time Nomad? That's the one thing I love about being on iPhone. Maybe eventually, someday, Time Nomad will be on Android. Chart for now. Chart details. Uranus. Oh, girl, I already closed this thing about widgets. Aries is empty right now. Uranus retrograde, Taurus 23 degrees. Is Uranus on top of my moon? No, my moon is like 27 and 28 degrees. Never mind. It's in a loose conjunction though. Uranus retrograde Taurus, Jupiter retrograde Gemini 11 degrees. Excuse me, Mars retrograde Cancer 24 degrees. So that is a Mars Uranus sextile, and it'll probably be getting tighter because Mars is quicker than Uranus. South Node in Virgo 29 degrees. Moon in Libra 17 degrees. Black Moon. Lilith is in Libra at 22 degrees. Mercury is in Capricorn 18 degrees. The Sun is 0 degrees Aquarius. Pluto is 1 degree of Aquarius. The ascendant right now is 20 degrees of Aquarius. Saturn is 16 degrees Pisces. Venus is 17 degrees Pisces. Neptune is 27 degrees Pisces. And the North Node is 29 degrees Pisces. So, yes, it is officially Aquarius season. The Sun is at detriment in Aquarius. It's interesting that in the first quarter, 1 through 4. No, because the first quarter would be 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Out of the first 4 signs, everything is retrograde right now. Uranus retrograde Taurus, Jupiter retrograde Gemini, Cancer, Mars retrograde Cancer. South Node is in Virgo. And then everything after that, so Moon in Libra, Mercury, Capricorn, Pluto in Aquarius, Saturn, Venus, Neptune, and Pisces are all direct right now. I don't know, something about that is interesting to me. This is, tropical. Okay. I don't know, that's just interesting. And there's nothing in Aries. The North Node just left Aries. Anyway, why was I? Oh, because I was curious if we were in Aquarius season, and we are. Cool. So the Delta has recovered. Life on the other side of the Delta is thriving. Cool. So an Advent card is something that inspires change in the future. So I'm going to get 2 Advents actually. I'm going to get an Advent on the workshop to archive side, and then an Advent for the workshop to Delta Town side. An Advent for the same timeline, and then an Advent for this other timeline. Now, I guess not theoretically, because it's how I read it, it was the intention that this timeline shift involves a greater degree of communion with the divine, or some aspect of the divine, or however this resonates and applies. It goes beyond the bridge. Interesting. I don't know. I feel like I gotta. I'm still getting reacquainted with being here on the higher fish, on the higher side, because especially in the beginning and since then, some of these have been kind of crazy. Like not crazy, but like there are no limiters or restrictors on this. So living amongst the angels, angels returning, or our eyes being open to the fact that like they're already here, girl, or something like that, girl. I don't know. All right. How many advents are there? There are two advents. What's also interesting is in a few different shows that I'm watching right now, two that I can immediately recall, um, they've made mentions to the world tree, to a world tree. In one show, there's like seven world trees. In another show, and then the world trees were responsible for the generation of mana, but the world trees disappeared. And so again, it's another show with that energy of like what magic used to be is on a completely different level of like what magic is now, because now there's like limited mana, there's limited magical resources, whereas back in the past it was like abundant, um, or the knowledge of how to like interact with it was different. Because so there's a single tree. There was a single tree here on the workshop, right? So it could have been like the seed of a single tree from this delta, where they were displaced from. Again, the focus is on the workshop, but it's like here's a single tree, but now this delta is covered in trees. Covered in trees, and there's also the meadow here on the other side of the town. Oh, I just noticed that. Anyway, so I guess the ad. Oh, girl, that's way too many. All of this is happening on the side of the workshop archive. Maybe I'll put the advent on the swamp in the delta. That's what I'll do. We're already an hour and 18 minutes in, and I ain't even used the story engine yet. All right. 3, 2, 1. The sighting of a rare creature is making headlines. It is believed to be magical, mythical, or extinct. So this is the advent for the swamp. Or within the same timeline. The sighting of a rare creature is making headlines. I'm just putting it under the swamp rather than putting it under the archive side. This is interesting though. This rare creature may be that's believed to be magical, mythical, or extinct. It's giving the energy of like again that archive of the sun. Like maybe in the time of antiquity, where the displaced people had originally inhabited this workshop, or according to the tellings of those who remember when we lived amongst others, like this, it feels like this rare creature was featured in that story. So it's like if that creature is real, then are the tellings real? Are the stories real? And then there's this influx of interest. It could also be like an angel, you know? There's a sighting of some kind of whatever of the divinity, maybe like real life miracles, you know, like what Jesus was doing in the Bible. And it's like, whoa, you know, I didn't, no, it's fine. I was going to be like, didn't the Pope just open a portal or something? What ended up, I don't know. Anyway, it was wild. I don't know if there was any follow up. I guess I wouldn't be. I guess I wouldn't know. It's not like I stay um, aware of that. It's just something that I had seen in passing. All right. So the advent of the Delta. 3, 2, 1. I'm actually. So this is going to be on its side. So I'm going to take this one. Stars are disappearing from the night sky due to pollution and optical illusion or something supernatural. This card, I actually read it. The contents of an important, oh, it's the other side of the contents of an important archive are being held hostage. This is the advent that came out for Masterless Marsh. And the contents of, like, that archive was held in the village that knows. So it's interesting that it's the other side. I almost want to take this because of that, and because the archive of the sun is here. I almost want to take it as the reverse of this. So rather than the contents of an important archive being held hostage, it's like the contents of an important archive are being like released, which would fit the sighting of the rare creature. It could be an alien, right? And now all of a sudden, there have been like more and more and more like Supreme Court hearings or whatever where people have testified about 122.22 on the clock. It was 122.21 before 122.22. But people who have testified to like the knowledge, the proof, the experiences that they've had, like non-human biologics and stuff like that, right? So it's like if the sighting makes headlines and it's seen to be true, then it's almost like, well, now there's this flood of information that like we've actually had, or things that we actually know, or like what we know of this. I almost want to take it more of that way, but I may actually. Stars are disappearing from the night sky due to pollution and optical illusion or something supernatural. The context here is there's another show on Netflix where people were seeing optical illusions because of a technology that far exceeded that of the times. The technology was powerful enough to make it appear like all over the world, to make it appear like the sky was like blinking, the stars were blinking. But you find out it was an illusion. But it's almost giving that like contact type of. Uh, Now, in the show, it was for not great reasons. Those don't necessarily have to hold true or be relevant here, but it's just that like they were in contact with the others, right? In that show, they were aliens. Spoiler alert. So this is the worlds that we've built using the deck of worlds. Again, there are no characters yet. I feel like the only character that I'm really interested in is this hunter, or a representation of the collective of hunters, this organization, this aspect of the divine that is on the other side of the veil, or that is approaching, vetting, interacting, maybe inviting, um, not withholding, extending an invitation. See, this almost gives me the vibes of the storm and the rod on the Legacy Channel. Meaning, it almost feels that, like, I don't know, maybe it's like this is the horror side. So take it as it resonates. I feel less pressure to ground it or make it real or relatable over here. Um, because up until this point, it's almost been like a more internal. And maybe it's these culturally specific tattoos. Up until this point, it's almost been like more internal, like through a dream, maybe the interaction or the validation, the co-signing, the stamp of approval, the putting in of the puzzle piece, the turning on of the divine light within that enables a human to greater access to their divine capacity and potential and powers, prowess. With that co-signing, but it's almost like if an aspect were to appear in person and do it, right? And so it's almost like, let's say that she's almost giving an eclipse, or it could be the stars disappearing from the night sky. It's like someone is approached by an aspect of the divine, and as that aspect of the divine descends upon the earth, it causes some kind of observable phenomenon or phenomena. Maybe it's many, or it's like they're accompanied by like whatever this rare creature is, right? And so the one person would have their interaction with that aspect of the divine or whatever, but everyone else, and maybe they like will slash do, maybe they don't slash won't see that aspect of the divine. Maybe they'll just see the phenomenon or whatever, the phenomena. But it's like that. Like someone is being approached, and as they're approached, it causes all of this. But again, like that's like the storm with cultivating the niner peel or the whatever that's been coming up or coming out recently. Interesting. I mean, in the Bible, when there's like a whole fanfare at the return, and that's like the only context I really have to go off of here, um, in a way. But it's also so these culturally specific tattoos is giving me spoiler alert. Well, no. So in Moana, Maui's tattoos are almost like a proof of his demigodness. It's proof of his divinity, right? Cool. All right, the story engine. Ouch. I'm gonna try to go through this a little quicker. So an agent is a person. There are four signs on the agents: a hunter at the bottom of the deck, a hunter. I was like, I want to know more about the aspect of the divine or whatever, this group of the ridge of hunters, the hunters, and then the hunters at the bottom of the deck. What? It worked. Again, I don't. The synchronicities they be consistent. The synchronicity. Even if I'm like, what is this? Oh, okay. A guardian. Bottom of the deck is a dancer. A guardian is what came out. A guardian, a bouncer, an officer, a parent. And I love how he's like looking up and there's like this light as if like this being of light is descending from the sky or something. Anyway. A guardian. See that again, that makes sense. Because the guardian is like, okay, so are you like one of them gonna try to whatever, folks? Or are you cool? Now there's a conflict and an engine. I think the engine is the motivation. So let's get the motivation for this guardian. And they are wants to regain, wants to get rid of. Here, they're kind of like opposites, but you can see they're also double sided. So, what's the motivation of this guardian? Interesting. I actually had a dream the other day about kids and superpowers. It was a weird dream, but it was essentially like when you find your inner child and integrate it, then you get like a superpower or something like that. It was a weird dream. I feel like it didn't last like too long. It was something about like children and superpowers. Anyway, all right, 3, 2, 1. The motivation. Oof, well, the side that came out is wants to get revenge on or wants to get revenge with. I feel like this is another card that I saw in the shuffle last time on the Legacy channel, but that didn't come up. Wants to end a conflict with. This is wants to get revenge with or wants to get revenge on. So a guardian wants to get revenge with / on. And then we'll do an anchor. Oh, that was immediate. A shrine. These cards fell out face down. A laboratory, a shrine, a laboratory, the workshop. A vision, a figurine, a drug. Either a guardian wants to get revenge on a shrine or a guardian wants to get revenge with a shrine. Now, if this guardian, as an aspect of the divine, wants to get revenge, here's another show that I'm watching. LOLOL. If a guardian wants to get revenge on a shrine, it feels like it was taken out of context. Right. And this guardian is associated with the hunters of the Bridge of Hunters, associated with the forces on the other side of the veil, associated with the Delta, the guardian of the Delta, the guardian of the Ridge, the guardian of the veil. Um, Again, it's like people moved into the ruins of this workshop. The workshop that was the homeland of a displaced people. So people from the Delta somehow ended up in the swamp and made like a paradise within the swamp using whatever knowledge or technology. After enough time has passed for people to forget and things to fade into folk tales or myths, people discover the workshop and move into it begin to use that knowledge or technology, or try to use that knowledge or technology. And this is the archive of the sun. Again, there was that almost like religious or venerated aspect of it because it's the archive of the sun. But it feels like whatever this is, whatever the people believe, or whoever the people worship, it's not the truth of whatever is on the other side of the veil. And that's like with the show that I'm watching, there is a goddess of something. I don't remember if she's like a goddess of light or a goddess of creation. There's a goddess, and there is the ruling, the like leading faith of the governing whoever in this land, but she's not associated with the faith. Like they don't actually worship her. They've created a false god and essentially given the false god her name. So there may be some of that faith that believe that they're worshiping the true, genuine, whatever, but they're not. They're worshiping something created by the powers that be. So to get revenge with a shrine is almost to provide that counter narrative or to like establish the true faith. To establish or to reinvigorate the true faith. To get revenge on a shrine is to like this guardian is to want to like more actively work against like this false god or whatever, the false faith. So it's almost like essentially the same thing, but the way of going about it is different enough that it reveals a different priority, right? So they could be essentially the same, but one is to like reestablish a true faith, and the other is to like demolish or to destroy a false one. Oof. What's the conflict here? There are two conflicts, but they will have to break a societal rule, but they will have to break a personal rule. So the conflicts aren't necessarily as opposing as like wants to end a conflict or wants to get revenge. But even that in and of itself is kind of like similar. It's like it's almost like if an aspect of the divine is like, I will descend and clear this up myself. This is not who I am. This is not what I stand for. I would never give my blessing or favor to this. I don't care who is out here doing whatever in my name. That's not me. It has nothing to do with me. That uh was that in the Whispers of Lord Ganesha? Was that on this channel? That wasn't the Whispers of Lord Ganesha. I feel like it was on this channel. There was something about cold-hearted human gods. Was it the Mooncat? The entry of the Mooncat in the Archeo? There are no cold-hearted human gods or something like that. It's almost like that type of energy. Interesting. It's like, let me set the record straight. Oof. There's such like a direct divine presence here that is really not necessary. Because I feel like that this divine presence has been like looming and has been like interacting, but it feels like from a distance. It feels like in ways that are non-observable outside of a person. But today the energy is reading as like very present, so much so that it causes observable phenomena. Like folks will know. Again, it's like these culturally specific tattoos, like these marks that symbolize whatever connection or favor. All right. Oh, three, two. Oh, it just came out. It came out on its side. I almost want to honor this coming out on its side, being like a balance of conflicts, especially because we have this like either the restoration of a true faith or the destruction of a false one. So maybe we'll read both and find the middle. But they will have to learn to trust again. Or, but they will have to betray a friend. So here's the conflict, but they will have to learn to trust again. So this could be a guardian wants to get revenge with a shrine, but they will have to learn to trust again. Or a guardian wants to get revenge on a shrine, but they will have to betray a friend. The with on whatever. Learning to trust again or betraying a friend. Maybe they'll have to do both. Maybe they would have to betray a friend and learn to trust again. And it feels like that goes back to the founder of the faith. That it feels like that goes back to the person who decided to tell the story the first time, or to the group of people that came to a consensus on how they were going to tell the story. Because however they decided they were going to tell the story, however they decided they were going to relay the information, was the groundwork for what the belief has become today. What they decided was important. She's almost giving like the Nicene Council, where where a group of people came together to decide which books of the Bible would be canon and which ones weren't, effectively creating the image of God for Christians and Catholics. Now, there are some within the Judeo Christian Catholic faith that have like an expanded, that might include things that were decided to be the like non-canon books. Excuse me. Like for example, like the Book of Enoch or whatever. Some people are into it. Apparently, there are multiple books of Enoch's. Maybe multiple translations, maybe multiple renditions. I don't know. I feel like there's more than one. Somebody like told me. Um, but it's almost like that. But see, this like betraying a friend, it feels like there was maybe an element of trust or entrusting that was done, right? Like maybe the others or the aspects of the divine had entrusted. Maybe, I don't know, Jesus had entrusted the apostles or whoever he interacted with to give a true to life, accurate telling of what happened and to not color it with their own personal beliefs or prejudices or influences or desires for what a people should be. Maybe they were first betrayed by a friend and they must in turn betray that friend, right? Because imagine like you have a friend who's been lying about all kinds of stuff, and you, for whatever reason, are in a position where you have to set the record straight. That friend would probably view, especially as humans, it's very human for a friend to view the telling of the truth or the revealing of the truth as a betrayal. Like, you're my friend. You were supposed to buy in. You were supposed to like support my lie. You were supposed to do this untruth. You were supposed to compromise your own integrity, if you have integrity, ethics, if you have them, morals, if you have them, to go along with my lie, to go along with my trick. Like, you've betrayed me. And it's like, where is that line, right? So that's why it's almost like it's simultaneously like, and then too, if this is an aspect of the divine who is, again, this is the guardian that is within the bridge of the hunters. Also on the Legacy channel, I used, I think it was like, I forget what it was called. But there were Dungeons and Dragons, not Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering cards. Innistrad, maybe it was Innistrad, where there were like werewolves and stuff, and there was a watch there. Um, but anyway, this guardian of the Bridge of Hunters, it's almost like it could be an aspect of the divine that had once upon a time descended or interacted with someone to give a gift to humanity, to help us get closer, or to help us progress, or to help us see that kindness and compassion and empathy can have us thrive in this world just as much as cutthroat, competitive, whatever. um like, again, like maybe there was a message that they gave at one point in time, and now they have to trust another human, another person, another starseed or whoever, to do the same. So they would be betraying that old friend by revealing the truth and simultaneously learning to trust someone else to deliver that truth. Or it could be a question of like whether or not it's worth it, right? Or do we just let the lie stand as is? Probably not. So, an aspect of this guardian, haunted. We've also had petty, peaceful, and valuable. But the way that came down is haunted. This is a haunted guardian. This could be, if this is like an aspect of the divine, like let's say that there are horrible things that are, it's either like there are horrible things that are being done, horrible things that have been done, or horrible things that could be done under the name of something as things progress forward, especially within this age of Aquarius or whatever, coming off of the age of Pisces. And it's almost like this guardian would be haunted because of what people have done with that information, or because of what people now incorrectly believe, because based off of what someone who was once trusted has decided to create. Almost like there's a partial responsibility, a feeling of a partial responsibility. Or at least that's what I'm getting from Hunter. That's why there's this desire to get revenge with or on a shrine, to set the record straight. Cool. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shuffle the 8-bit fantasy tarot. It is now 3 o'clock, which means I've been live for an hour, 48 minutes, and 50 seconds. So I'm going to pull the first of the cards for this guardian. Maybe I'll pull before and after judgment. I don't know if there's a card in the tarot that like represents the divine. Could be justice, I guess. Justice would be an easy one. So I'm going to pull before and after the first So the quantum new timeline cards are going to be, and the new timeline is without the veil. The current timeline is without, is with. The new timeline is without the veil. The current timeline is with the veil. With some level of direct observable intervention, apparently, and without. And again, like this is one of those almost like external things, because it's almost like there are some whose lives would be obviously, I feel like, so like if all of a sudden, like, I don't know, aliens showed up and they're like, hey, we're going to be cohabitating with you, or if the truth of like peoples was revealed, and like they've been living amongst us this whole time and we just have to like integrate, right? There is the timeline of the revealing and integration and the timeline of the continued secret. Um, but it's almost like most people as individuals, like we're still going to have life to live. We're still going to go about our day to day, right? Still going to wake up, go to work, or do whatever, regardless of whether or not the truth is revealed, you know? The Two of Cups. What? The Star, the Hangman in reverse, the King of Cups, the Page of Cups, the Queen of Wands. All of these cards just fell out when the Two of Cups came out. Interesting. What's at the bottom? The moon. And the moon is on its side. Now, that side of the moon was the same orientation as the archive of the sun. I'm going to look before and after. So the veil droppers are, I'm going to say, the Fool, the Ten of Swords, because the Ten of Swords is about endings, Death, the Wheel of Fortune, and the World. The Fool, the Ten of Swords, Death, the Wheel of Fortune, the World. I'm going to say the On the Same Path cards are the Chariot to introduce a major into the minor mix. So it'll be the Chariot, the Ten of Wands, Six of Swords, Eight of Cups, and maybe the Seven of Pentacles because of the energy of cultivation. Yeah, I think I'll do those five. And I'll just do the first one that I see as this deck is. I'm going to pull off the top, and then we're going to end this. The Moon in reverse, the Seven of Swords in reverse, the Nine of Swords in reverse. The Moon in reverse and the Seven of Swords in reverse especially are giving me an energy of things being revealed. The Moon upright is a secret kept or something unknown. In reverse, it's revealed. The Seven of Swords upright is trickery, and deceit. In reverse, it's like honesty, something being revealed. The Nine of Swords in reverse, it's almost giving me like a waking nightmare. So instead of it being, but not necessarily a nightmare, like in a bad way. Because it's like upright, it's these things that keep you awake at night. So in reverse, it's like seeing the thing during the day rather than it being this mental imagining of a troubled mind or an anxious heart. The World and the Hierophant. All in reverse. The contents of an important archive are being held hostage. What was the other one? The dominant culture group is rewriting history. Nine of Swords in reverse, the World in reverse, the Hierophant in reverse. So this is the quantum, from the swamp to the delta. The Hierophant in reverse. The Hierophant in reverse is interesting. Excuse me. Because of the Guardian that wants to set the record straight. This because of the haunted Guardian. Maybe this is some aspect of the divine in some way, or some collective of divine energies that as we enter a new era, the age of Aquarius, or as we stand on a precipice of great change at a crossroads of destiny for so many because of the implications of the expanse, because the scope of power and influence, because we are in a potentially um, pivotal moment. This Nine of Swords in reverse is giving me this haunted guardian. So the Nine of Swords in reverse, the World in reverse, the Hierophant in reverse is like that haunted guardian wanting to set the record straight in order to not be like haunted anymore. Type energy. The Emperor upright. Excuse me. 2 of Swords in reverse, 8 of Swords in reverse, 8 of Pentacles in reverse. 2 of Pentacles, 4 of Cups, the Magician, the Tower, 4 of Swords, the Devil, 5 of Swords, 10 of Swords in reverse. 5 of Swords in reverse, 10 of Swords in reverse, Knight of Pentacles in reverse for the same track. So from the workshop in the swamp to the archive. All of these are in reverse. The Devil is on its side with the 4 of Swords on its side. The Magician and the Tower were just upright. No, this side. Wait. It's the archive of the sun. Because like that's how the text is reading. I think that moon may have been the ridge. Because I think before I looked at like which side of the card the text was on, which is the same, so maybe not. Maybe the moon was on the same side. The Magician upright, the Tower upright, the 4 of Cups on the side. Magician, Tower, 4 of Swords, the Devil. Now, the 5 of Swords in the Spirit Keeper's Tarot, we see the Papal Bull, right? So if you remember the Hector, there was the guy with the bull mask, but in the Holy See, the Hierophant, you see the same like bull head, bull mask. So it's interesting that the Hierophant and the 5 of Swords are both here. But these are also in reverse. It's almost like either way, things are going to move forward. So what's the difference? Bottom of the deck is the Knight of Swords. That's facing the same, the text is facing the same direction as the Ridge of Hunters. And behind that is the Page of Swords. And it's living in the same way. Interesting. So this would be like the scout, that would be the communication or the messenger. So the person or the energy that observes is not necessarily the same aspect as the one that initiates contact, basically. We get the world and the Ten of Swords. The Ten of Swords is an ending. No, I did this wrong. The Ten of Swords was in the same category as the world. Okay. I almost went on a whole whatever. The Ten of Swords was the minor in the same category as the world. So we are still going. So it almost makes sense that, again, that tie between the Hierophant and the Five of Swords, and these cards are all in reverse too. Okay. I'm looking for the Chariot, the Six of Swords, Eight of Cups, Ten of Wands, Seven of Pentacles. Ten of Cups, Six of Cups, Two of Wands, Ten of Wands, Ace of Cups. So we have the Two of Wands, the Ten of Wands, and the Ace of Cups. The Ten of Wands is headed in the direction of the Ace of Cups, and these are both facing the archive of the sun. The Two of Wands, though, is facing the Ridge of Hunters. And it's interesting because the Two of Wands sits at the rampart, sits at the ridge, sits at the veil, and like is looking at the world beyond it. So again, facing the same direction as the ridge. Whereas these two are facing the direction of the archive based on the text. You see that? When the ridge is upright, the Two of Wands is upright. When the archive is upright, these two are upright. If that helps illustrate my point. Or, if that helps illustrate things. So this was this way. Almost stopped at the Ten of Swords, but the Ten of Wands was our correct thing. Now, what's interesting is, again, with the world, everything is in reverse. So the world gets turned, flipped right upside down. But again, that's what the power of the truth of this guardian is, because whatever the original telling, whatever the foundation of belief was, it was not necessarily completely accurate to the source information. Source information, lol. But the same timeline is like linear. Excuse me. It's lateral. It's not upright and in reverse. It's left facing and right facing. So on the same timeline, it's almost like in the same timeline, someone ventures to the ridge, someone ventures to the edge. They go to the border, the boundary of belief, or the border and boundary of something. But see, it's almost that two-phase journey again that came out earlier. The one where it was like, the first people who reached the end, they went all the way to the finish line only to find out that there were things that they were supposed to take. There was knowledge that they needed to cross the finish line. And so they had to make the whole journey all over again and gather that. But the people that were following in the present day are gathering the knowledge as they go. So when they reach the finish line, they'll have everything that they need to cross it. They're doing it the right way. And it almost just like happens, right? And then they meet someone who made that original trek and they're like, oh my gosh, like y'all are doing it the right way. We got all the way to the end to find out that we had to go to the beginning. But like y'all are getting things as you go. And so then they know that, okay, as we're venturing forward, we need to continue to do this. Whereas they were already sort of doing it before. And again, it feels like it plays into that intuition discernment. our intuition and discernment will have us navigating in the way. The truth of like intuition and discernment is the truth of divinity that we're in communion with, rather than it being like shadows, shades, impressions of hierophants and hierophantic energies, right? It's like, again, being in communion with Christianity as an example, or Christianity, Catholicism as an example. It's like having a personal relationship with God, Jesus, rather than getting to know the God, Jesus, that's like preached in a pulpit. And it's not that no one has the whatever, but again, like with the Nicene Council, people a long time ago decided which books of the Bible would be canon, effectively controlling, or oh, what's the word? Curating, effectively curating the type of relationship that we'd have with God, Jesus, and like so many things. So again, if we're like primarily Bible or primarily scripture or primarily leaning on what is written, the written word, it's possible to have this complete, like the God Jesus that we're worshiping. It's possible. I'm not saying it's true. It's possible that like the real God Jesus is a completely different energy. Again, that show that I'm watching, the ruling people at the time created a new religion, borrowed the name of the true goddess of light or goddess of creation, but like created this fake god. And so, although they have like a semblance of her likeness and her name that is key or central in their like churches and cathedrals and stuff, it's not the real goddess. And so it's almost like, again, there's this energy that goes to the brink, that goes to the border, that goes to the ridge, goes to the wall, but they fill their cup up at the archive. So it's like the energy that they see beyond the ramparts, beyond the castle walls. This body of water, that's not the water that they're filling their cup up with. Again, that's another, it's just the layer that these cards give. They're looking beyond the ridge, but filling the cup up at the archive. And maybe that's why this is manifesting as the Ten of Wands. Or maybe that's why we see the Ten of Wands rather than the Six of Swords, rather than the Chariot, or even like the Seven of Pentacles. It's like that's why the Ten of Wands is the overburdened. Because the only divinity within this is that which is bestowed by man. Divinity bestowed by man is the receptacle of belief, right? So it's almost like it can only do what, and so even in like different contexts, even in the context of like, let's say we want to make a timeline shift because however we've prepared, it's not taking us to our big break or whatever. Um, oh, I had it, then I lost it. Essentially, there's no water here. So this would almost be like, let's say that there is a pre-established pipeline to success. All, it's fine. Let's say there's a pre-established pipeline to success. Meaning, like, if you want to be successful in an industry or in a business or whatever, then you have to get the approval of this person or this board of people. And so, like, these are the things that you do. And I'm not saying that like one person is paying another, but it's like, your greatest chance of success is to go to this school, to get this mentor, and then to work with this director to get your big break, and then whatever. So it's almost like it all hinges upon a certain person or a group of people. But let's say, like, for whatever reason, something comes out and that person or group of people lose their credibility or they lose their resources, right? So everyone that took that path is now in question through association. Like, how much did you know? How much were you involved? But also, it's almost like everything collapses. And so it's almost like if people continue to think that, like, even with the collapse, like, well, I got to go to this school and then I got to work under this mentor. And then maybe I don't work under that director. Maybe I work under a different director that is also associated with that school and mentor. Uh, Sorry. Dinner plans. Um, so it's almost like after all that happens, like, we're still like, maybe I work under a different director because that director was like kind of, but like, I'm still going to go to the same school, still going to have the same mentor, still going to work with the same sort of people at large or whatever. Um, but it doesn't have to be that regimented. You can be discovered anywhere. Like, it's almost like an energy of true talent will shine regardless. You don't have to go through this pipeline. You don't have to 10 of wands to get to this ace of cups in order to get your cup filled by something that isn't necessarily what it advertises itself to be anyway. Not when you can look over the rampart and see this water here. So if you can look over the rampart and see this here, but somehow be moving in this direction. Now, granted, sometimes you got to go east before you can go west, but eventually the path should get to where you see, unless, because again, this is the swamp workshop, and this is within, all of this is within the swamp. You can see beyond, but just like the Amityville horror, or whatever, what I assume from what I think I read, if that's the right movie, this could be the case though, where it's like the boundaries are actually bigger. So now this is bringing the dead end and the threshold from a recent video, from one of the recent videos on the Legacy channel. Recent in terms of like, um, the last five, not recent in terms of like last week. Um, but it was something that came up in a recent video on the Legacy channel. Come on, brain. The dead end and the threshold. How the dead end is something almost of like our design and our making. And we think that if we go beyond the dead end, then we'll end up at this pool of water that we see here. But the dead end is artificial. The dead end is man made. It's created by either fear, worry, anxiety within us, or it's created by what we've been conditioned to believe as true of the divine because of any of the knowledge and access that we have. Again, excuse me, not saying that every pastor, preacher, church minister, uh, bishop, whatever, not saying every religion or spiritual belief system, not saying that no one has accurate information, but again, the point of the Hierophant is to get us to connect to the divine for ourselves, not to stand as a substitute. Anyway, the Hierophant creates the dead end, can create the dead end, but the threshold is way beyond that. The ridge, this could just be like a rampart wall of the workshop within the swamp. This could be the borders of the workshop, but the borders of the workshop is not necessarily this ridge, the ridge of hunters. It's like the ridge is beyond the workshop. The ridge is, close to the delta. The delta would be beyond the threshold in this case. Beyond the dead end is everything between the workshop and the threshold to the delta. Almost like maybe it is known that there will be some who venture, even in that. So, in the show, with the organization, the people that venture outside of the walls, they only venture outside of the walls so far. It takes a while for you to find out that they're actually on an island and that the world on the other side of the ocean is like completely different. And, of course, everything was intentional. The people on the island, the people within the walls, thought that that was their whole world and that the world outside of the walls was whatever. And it was like there's a world beyond the world outside of the walls because beyond the world, the world outside of the walls is limited by the ocean, but there is more life out there beyond that. Excuse me, there are more lands anyway. See, but again, that was this energy of the archive of the sun and it's almost obsession. It's contextual relationship with the past. It's almost like self-directing. It directs you back further and further and further back rather than directing someone forward. But that going forward or the desire to want to go forward has to be something that comes from within. Or the knowledge and recognition of like the water that I'm getting from this Ace of Cups, it's not necessarily, again, I don't know, a relationship with the divine or a healthy intuition will sort of guide you in terms of like uh, what may be true for an individual, what may have been an experience for one person, what is or isn't for one person, what's true of the divine at a greater, grander, whatever, and what I don't know, somebody some time ago said, and what has been codified into knowledge. But anyway, I feel like the Hierofish takeaway is this potential for, in whatever way it manifests, whatever it means, however it applies to our personal lives, um, this guardian, this haunted guardian that wants to set the record straight, being observably present, like some kind of phenomenon is going to be associated with this. Cool. Now I'm just going to put these right on top because I must continue on with my day. Maybe I'll keep doing these. Or maybe I'll do another one. See, this was fun. I'm just like, again, with these cards, I'm like, oof, kind of love them. And it's interesting, again, the ties that came out between this swamp and that marsh. And how the Delta came out for sort of both as this land of plenty and abundance, covered in trees, crisscrossed by canals, the site of a former massacre. But maybe, too, that's the thing, right? It's just like hierophants of old, or maybe how people of old have used knowledge or an access to the divine or whatever in a way for their own personal gain and benefit. So too are we as people sort of capable of doing the same, right? And there are a lot of things that can confound, I want to say, the relationship and dynamic between what is divine or what is sacred and what is profitable or what we need to survive, either monetarily, if we have a path journey that involves the use of gifts in some way, or look, justice at the cut again with five of wands, whatever this five of wands is with justice ain't with it. Or just like personally in our own personal comfort within self, comfort of the ego, how we wish to view ourselves or don't wish to view ourselves, and how that affects things as well, right? We have an origin, we have a landmark, we have two namesakes and another landmark. Interesting. All of this because it's like, do we really? I mean, not even a question of if we really always are shifting into new timelines, but sometimes, like, if it's even necessary, or if it is, or if it could be just the future or the next step in the same timeline that we're on, right? Because I think with that, there is something of the timeline that someone was already on, or the way that someone navigated a timeline to attract the attention of the guardian, the haunted guardian, to view them as a potential person to trust after that trust was betrayed in the past. And so that shift in timeline is because of things that happened in the current timeline. So it's like it's both. It's both like this huge leap or this quantum shift, but it's also a byproduct or a natural result of what was already done in the previous timeline. Aren't all timeline shifts like that? Girl, I don't know. Yeah, sure, I guess. Excuse me. Or maybe it's just because for me personally, I feel a lot of things shifting in my life drastically. Like I feel major life changes, but it doesn't feel like a timeline shift to me. It feels like a natural result of everything that I've been doing and all the choices and decisions that I've been making up until this point. You know what I mean? Like if I invested in Apple when Steve Jobs was still back in his garage, and now that investment has whatever in size, that's not because of a shift in anything, it's because of the natural progression and the natural growth of the company. My investment has a higher payout for me now because I invested like back then. You know what I mean? Anyway, I do want to get a final card from Seven of Wands. I do want to get a final card from the 8-Bit Fantasy Tarot. And I also want to put all of these up right because I just do. But that's also like, so that shift in timeline or whatever, the shift in timeline here today is big moon cat energy, like the moon cat and the survivor. The moon cat that marches to the beat of its own drum, the one that is truly connected and who can trust and follow their intuition and discernment to lead them in ways that a Hierophant may not. And again, it's not every single person, it's not every single belief or whatever, but some systems of belief are more tailored towards the opinions and desires of whatever individual sort of originated or planted the seeds of those beliefs. Not necessarily true of the divine, right? But true divinity. I guess I was going to say, but true divinity speaks, but I think impressions of false divinity also speaks because of the power of human belief. We also encountered the power of human belief in the tale of the wolf, but it's when human belief met the limitations of reality. Because the belief is that the big wolf was scary and was going to eat the person, but the reality was that the wolf helped that person get out of the forest. And I feel like wolves are such an interesting animal because you have like the lone wolves and then you have pack animals, and it's like what people have observed and come to understand about wolf culture and social dynamics. Ooh, the lover and justice advocate. That's what Gemini and Libra. No Aquarius. Maybe Aquarius is the sun in the sky. Um, what was I saying? I don't remember. It's fine. Um, yes. So interesting. Very. Again, it feels like the presence of the divine was so palpable here again to the point where it causes some kind of phenomena. But that was also on the Legacy channel when I used the Water Known Animal Spirits recently. Again, recent in terms of the number of videos, not necessarily in terms of date. There was the eagle, the hawk, and the elk. And it was like divinity can't manifest as the eagle on earth for whatever reason, or divinity chooses not to in order to maintain the integrity of the veil. So, as it incarnates or as it presents itself on earth, it takes the form of the hawk, which is barely less impressive than an eagle. You know what I mean? Or whatever. But it does have to diminish or dim itself in order to not rupture the veil as it comes down. But with the whole, it looks like stars are disappearing in the sky or whatever. It's like divinity descending in a greater aspect of its divinity to the point where the veil does begin to shimmer and some stuff does begin to happen, you know? And again, maybe it's because there's a certain truth that needs a certain something that needs to be made right. All right. Page of Cups. I want at least one more. We saw the Page of Cups on this channel, I believe, in the 8-Bit Fantasy, in the Fable Makers Animated Tarot, where like the fish was coming out of the cup and going in the cup and coming out and going in. Here the fish is peeking, and that fish meant something. I feel like it was, again, that communication with the Divine Three of Cups at the bottom of the deck, which is a sort of kinship, it feels like. The Empress just came out. Bottom of the deck is the Ace of Swords, which is the truth. But especially here now, the Ace of Swords is the truth in a way where the intuition of the Queen of Cups, the pre-high priestess, is fallible. Right. So because of her worries, because of her fears, because of her desires, maybe sometimes in certain contexts and situations, especially, it can be difficult for her to differentiate her intuition truly from any of those things. And so it leaves her in some areas, especially susceptible to devil energy. But the Ace of Swords is the clarity of like that is truly intuited, whatever. That's not a result of what the Queen of Cups wants, what the Queen of Cups is manifesting, what the Queen of Cups is worried or afraid of. It's not the patterning of the Queen of Cups. It's not the life that the Queen of Cups has lived up until that moment and what they know of whatever. It's truly um, intuitive. It's a true knowing. And we did see the devil and the magician upright before the card before the ten of swords. So what before the nine of swords? No, not the nine of swords. Before the seven of swords in reverse. I think maybe five of swords. Five of swords, ten of swords. Before the five of swords in reverse was the magician and the devil upright. The six of swords can see beyond it. But this time she's come out with the empress. So the empress is the queen of all queens. And it's like it's her balance of, I want to say humorous, but it's her balance of aspects that will help her almost like refine her intuition. It's the sword. So it could be the Queen of Swords energy within the Empress that helps temper her or validate her um, intuition of her waters. It's also interesting here. We see the page, both the Page of Cups and the Empress are on like the banks of these waters. You could say they're in the delta. Excuse me, especially where we saw the two of cups looking over the rampart. The two of wands, sorry, where we saw the two of wands looking over the ramparts. These are actually at water's edge. So it's like the waters that the two of wands saw, that's where they are. And because the Ace of Swords is here, like they're truly at those waters, truly at the ridge of hunters, truly at the edge of the veil, rather than like being outside of the village, but still within the curated experience of whatever. Knight of Pentacles and Temperance were within the split. So anyway, 2 hours, 32 minutes, and 32 seconds later, the 23232. That is what I got. I hope y'all have an amazing whatever whenever you see this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. I hope that whatever you need along your path journey and way you find. And if you perchance happen upon some aspect of the divine, I guess, some angel, some whatever, IRL in real life, I don't know, that's wild. And yeah, take it as it resonates, when it resonates, if it resonates, as it resonates. A seagull. I just saw a seagull climb. This, like, my friend stays high enough. Oh my gosh, it's right there. My friend stays, and it's still climbing. He stays high enough in this building that you don't, like, there's not a lot of goal traffic up here. I actually saw one, I think, again, I don't see him up here frequently. I saw one yesterday. And I pointed it out to him. I was like, look, a seagull. He was like, where? And he had saw it like just as it rounded the corner of the building. But it's just like it's out here flying around. And again, so he stays in the same building as his brother. So when I used to come visit, I was like several floors down, like but right where the seagulls perch. Like, yeah, that's why. Like, okay. On this channel, I don't think I've sort of like shown the goals as much. But there was like so much more goal traffic, and there would be like, I would wake up and eat my breakfast, and then the seagulls would be out there. And there's a seagull with like a mark on its neck, so I know who she is. And she was there when I came, I guess about a few months ago now, a month and some change ago. But when I went down there yesterday or the day before, I haven't really. Anyway, I don't see sequels as much as I used to, and that's one of the things that makes me sad about being up here. The view is different. I can appreciate that, but the goals, they just don't like 23444. They just don't fly around here as much. So I'm glad that we got to see that one climbing as this video ended. So anyway, yeah.